Rome lit streets with burning Christians by the hundreds. Now it's the Catholic capital. Aztecs sliced out still beating hearts by the thousands, but the free tribes are still here. Nazis skinned Jews to make lampshades, but synagogues still stand. Tribal Africans were sold in slave ships. Now their ancestors captain the American fleet. Modern women murder their own unborn, but each year they kill less. Today, the Nahash still sizzles in the electronic branches, and the dragon wars on the lady's genetic seed. But the Didache for apprentice Christians opens with, there are two ways, the way of life and the way of death, and they are vastly different. The way is hard. The path is straight. The journey long. But those who were last are now first. And the Savior's secret is succinct. The more vulnerable we become, the more invincible God makes us. I'm retired SOCOM soldier, ex-DEA special agent, and DIA intelligence officer, turned whistleblower warrior. Served and sabotaged, rejected and redeemed, failed and forgiven, betrayed and saved, rejecting revenge, humbled and blessed, repurposed in redemption, as chaplain, leader, teacher, and truth teller. Now America's intelligence officer, following God, leading my family, and any that choose to join on our long walk to faith and freedom. Welcome. I'm Jeff Prather, and this is the PratherPoint. Welcome, everybody, and also take a look at this. This doesn't have any sound, but this is in France, where a prison van was stopped. This is a pit ramming technique. This is a professional law enforcement technique I was taught at DEA driving school. And then some Muslim terrorists jump out, shoot and kill the guards, and then free the fly, Mohammed Amra, a highly dangerous drug gang boss. And so this is showing that now their weapons handling is not that great, but they are very bold and brave in their killing and very thorough as well. And this is showing that the drug cartels span continents now. America and Europe are drenched in drugs. And it's not just the southern border that I worked a decade from 90 to 2000, and the cartels long controlled the Mexican border. They control the American border as well and have transshipment points in all the major American cities and into Europe. And that's what this shows. This looks like something that would happen in Spain. It's happening in France at Normandy. And so this is really crucial as we approach June 6th, the anniversary of D-Day, the Day of Days. This is what France looks like now. And France is essentially over because of that. So I wanted to share that with you so that you understand the import of what is happening. And the French government has not been able to do anything about this because, again, this is fifth generation war. This is what it looks like. Nobody is going to be in uniform. Nobody is going to be carrying a flag, but it is war nonetheless. Further in Europe happening, the Slovakian Prime Minister Fico was recently shot. Take a look at this.
Just moments after a gunman opened fire on Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico, he collapses as bodyguards bundle him into the car. Security officials say he was shot 5 times at close range. The alleged shooter pinned down the suspect, described by local media as a 71-year-old former security guard and activist, taken by chopper to the closest trauma hospital, seen here being wheeled in. Tonight, Fico's office says he's fighting for his life. The shooter's motive is unclear. The Prime Minister has been a divisive figure in the Eastern European country of around 5.4 million people. The populist leader of a NATO ally whose pro-Russian, pro-Putin stance brought him to power for a third time. He has stood firm against sending more weapons to Ukraine. Tonight, the Slovak defense minister called for calm.
What's happened? It's a political assault. It's absolutely clear. And we have to react on that.
So clearly there, while the news says we're not sure of the motive, it's very clear. Then they go to say he was against sending more weapons to the fake war in Ukraine. He was supportive of Putin. He was also supportive of Trump all the way. And the story is very clear. The shooting is very clear and repeated, just like the Japanese politician who was supportive of Trump and against the Ukraine war as well. And there's a clear narrative to that here. And this is more fifth generation warfare, that is kinetic covert warfare that emphasizes a psychological viewpoint, just like Uvalde. Uvalde, those children had to die so that the mimetic warfare meme could come out, that it doesn't matter if you have lots of armed cops with guns, you don't need, it doesn't work anyway. That's what the story is here. The Supreme Court is very well aware of this too, and all judges, because they are being extorted and threatened for a long time now. Remember the Epstein judge whose son and husband were shot by the guy dressed up as a FedEx delivery guy and had a delivery van. And these are clearly what I call the global cabal, which are members of the deep states of different countries, which are the intelligence agencies, putting their message out there very clearly that if you don't do what we say, we will kill you. That is the point of all of this. And further, as well, one more to show you, and that is the latest bridge to be hit. And this one is in Galveston. And this goes right along with what we have seen, and this goes along with the subtitle of the show, More Maritime Sabotage, Panama Canal. I know the Panama Canal very well. I spent a lot of time in Panama. And now, remember, there was a container ship that got lodged to cut. Now the Panama Canal is really reduced. I was back in Quarry Heights, back in a tunnel, working the Contra stuff back in the 80s, when Ollie North went before Congress and everybody was asking if we were going to go for 7th Special Forces, and we didn't, because everything we were doing was legal. Ollie North helped to build the Clinton cartel of death on cocaine, Contras, cash, and the CIA. So I was no fan of him there at all as well. But this is very clear what is happening. This happened before. Again, in the Panama Canal, it happened in Nordstrom. It's very clear that this was Naval Special Operations doing that. There's no doubt about that. And then beyond that, the Key Bridge. And there's more data. I don't know if I have that. Let me see. Yeah, I do have that. So let me show you that as well. And again, this doesn't have sound, but this is talking about the Key Bridge strike, which I called sabotage very clearly. There were blackouts on board, very similar to what's happening in the Galveston Bridge as well. And this is the beginning of covert siege warfare. Siege warfare, there's nothing new about that, but this is the plan to make America like Somalia through starvation, through siege. Everybody used to have the concerts for Somalia, the rock guys, but the food was rotting on the docks, and it came out in the movie Black Hawk Down, which was about Operation Gothic Serpent, which was clearly showing that the warlords were using food and starvation as a weapon. And now they have graduated to doing that in Europe. Michael Yon, the great Ernie Pyle journalist of this generation, who also served in special forces. I've had him on a lot. I think, helped him grow. Now he's on Tucker and he's on Alex Jones. I've made Alex Jones. Tucker doesn't talk to me anymore. But this is the war raging. What I'm trying to do is show you the 5G war raging. It's not civil war. Again, it's not us versus us. It's us versus them. They'd like us to think it was us versus us, but it is not that. And despite the movies coming out, it is not that. So this show is GWAT. And GWAT, of course, stands for Government War on Terrorism. I've got my ribbon from that. But what I'm retitling that is the government warmongers organizing terror, because all of these terror events are caused by them. the terrorists do execute them, just like October 7th. Yeah, did Hamas go in and slaughter Israeli civilians? Yes. But as General Flynn has confirmed on my old American media show before it became Patriot TV, and he came on, and I'll try and get him on. Somebody was asking me to have him on. He confirmed, yeah, there was a stand down. I've worked borders for a long time. I knew there was no way that could happen. He's actually walked the Israeli border couldn't happen. And since then, IDF soldiers have come forward and confirmed that this was a setup, a stand down. And so the Israeli government, the Netanyahu government, the Orthodox are much more at fault even than the Hamas who did it. Just like the rhinos, the Republicans in name only, are much more at fault than the Dems for allowing all of this to happen. It's very important to grasp that, to understand that, because again, the first rule of war is to know when you're in one. The problem with fifth generation war is it doesn't even look like war. It's hard to know when you are in one. So that's why I'm entitling this cast GWAT, Government Warmongers Organizing Terror, and started off with more maritime sabotage, Panama Canal, Nordstrom, Key Bridge, and now Galveston, Texas. So you can see them bringing these operations that they run overseas first via CIA, working overseas, using the military, which is exactly what happened with log life to Facebook, which is exactly what happened with the COVID furin cleavage. Starts in Fort Detrick. CIA comes and takes it when Nixon says it's to be destroyed, then sends it to China, and they're still saying, well, yeah, it looks like maybe it came out of China. It's not the China virus. It's the Fort Detrick virus. It's democide. It is, and I spent my entire career either as a soldier or as a special agent or as an intelligence officer with all the executive branches. And that's what I'm saying. It clearly is. It's democide. It is the government trying to kill us. So, and they're doing a good job. The first version of that was the COVID bioweapon, not a vaccine, kill off. That's 16 to 20 million. Now the turbo cancer will kill off more. Nobel Prize winner Luc Montagnier has predicted anybody who took the jabs will not last a decade. That's turning out to be true. The footballers and fake newsers are falling dead at their fields and on their news desks daily. Turbo cancer is happening very clearly. But to follow on from that also now with the geoengineering, chemtrails, and the poisoning of the water supplies is to use 5G warfare, covert combat kinetics from Slovakia to France to control the politicians and leaders that might not go along with the script. And so that's why Fico was attacked. That's why the Japanese politician was attacked. That's why all of these folks are suicided, is where necessary, they will kinetically kill. Now, that doesn't really fit into 5G warfare, but it fits into the 5G warfare in that it's never really overt. It's nobody in a uniform with a flag. It's narcos, in this case, Islamic narcos in France. In this case, it's a leftist who was the head of a peace group in Slovakia. It's more barges, but make no mistake, this is warfare masked in 5G style. That's the most important to understand. And for those people who say there's going to be a third world war, again, I'm calling this a fourth world war. Global war on terror was a third, and it is clearly raging. But you will only see the kinetics covertly, not overtly. Exactly. And they will only happen where they can't execute influence operations to control. But they will target everybody, and that's what we're going to talk about mainly in this show as well. But I first also want to cover the bird flu scandemic that, again, makes America look like a Somali siege via starvation. And, of course, they're talking about the bird flu coming out. But this is an overhyped threat. The thing you've got to remember about the left, and whether it's communism, progressivism, socialism, it's really all Satanism. My wife just said this the other night, and I thought that was brilliant. And it's a human bird flu pandemic hoax to reset the food system. So how do they go find this bird flu stuff that's going to cows and going to humans? Well, they go out there and they plant it. It's just like a knock and talk, which I've talked about. Never let the feds in. I did knock and talks. If you let them in, they'll plant evidence, like they did with Jeremy Brown, my fellow former Special Forces sergeant who outed the FBI guys who came to his house before January 6th. And so the government's response to the bird flu so far has been to kill 85 to 87 million birds, but that's not really enough because America is so versatile and so resilient because of flyover country, because of all the farm people, because of the Bible Belt, not because of the metrosexual cities. But what they will do is continue to create this fear. And as they continue to create this fear, then they will get people to voluntarily kill their own animals. And that's what this legislation is about coming up right now. And this legislation is wanting to require identification of all livestock. Now, mostly time, if you're not a country guy, most livestock has ear tags on it, but they want electronic ear tags. It's completely imbecilic and impossible to pull off. But that's okay because they want what's impossible, so it is to be controlled. And notice the date there, May 9th, 2024, rules and regulations that are just coming out in the Department of Agriculture. U.S. Marshals down 50 to 60%, haven't been arresting drug dealers and seizing Hummers and stuff. Now they're seizing farms and farm equipment. Why? Because that's what the Praetorian Guard once done. The Praetorian Guard controlled who got to be Caesar, who got to be the tyrant. And that's what they're saying here now. Here, the use of electronic identification ear tags is official identification in cattle and bison. Again, ear tags are nothing new, or tattoos, nothing new. Electronic ear tags, very difficult. And that goes along with all the electronic devices to influence us. And that's what our guests are going to talk about here in a minute. But this is how to control the entire system and also control and cull the herd, literally. The herds. And this is exactly the sins that were committed against the tribes. The Indian ponies, not the American horses, but the Indian ponies that were always here, going against the narrative, were killed off. And then the bison, the buffalo, were killed off because buffalo couldn't have fences. They needed to roam. And the new agriculture, the new system requires fences and cows. So that's the stage we're being in. We're being pushed in from the east and the west and from the south, just like the tribes were. And so that's the most important thing to understand and grasp there. But again, like AI, like everything else, the bird flu is a hoax, a scam, even though it is being modified. And I've had Sasha Latipova on to explain again, how they have done that in great detail. So I won't bother to continue to go into that in a great amount of detail. But I do want you to understand that, and Dr. McCullough said this when he was on, is he confirmed this too. The next scamdemic that attacks us via democide through 5G war is not going to be against us, but it's going to be against our chickens, against our livestock. And again, it is to make America like Somalia, to use food and starvation as a weapon. And Michael Yon is saying famine begins this year in Europe, and maybe famine begins in America next year. So that's very, very crucial to understand and grasp. Before I go any further, I just do want to say out to my sponsors. So encourage you to join sat123.com, sat123.com, and get the family plan, get up to 3 free satellite phones, ensuring everyone's a call away. Remember, there's going to be a grid down event. That's why the Great American Meetup there, greatamericanmeetup.com or jeffreyprather.com/GAM is coming up in June 7th through 9th. The insurance companies are shutting things down June 6th. June 6th, the anniversary of D-Day. That's why you need satellite phones. You can get the new Iridium, which I really love. I used to deploy and use lots of these, and Thorias as well. Works great at $95 a month. The Inmarsat at $85 a month. And there's a family plan there as well. You can call 855-980-5830, 855-980-5830. If you can't afford that, You can get the Connecta phone, Connecta mobile. Now they for security, you have to have other Connecta phones, but I've had Brett Miller on. We'll have him on again to talk about that. And if you can't afford that, the Bivy stick, I still didn't pick that up from the floor the other night when I dropped it. But Galileo.com, I'm on Sat Text. Last time Grid Down went out, I put out Sat Text. Team America does that. You have to have interlocking concentric circles for resiliency in the middle of crisis. That's real important to understand. And again, I just got a call about asking about the hypochlorous acid, so I will return that call after the show. But if you're coming to GAM, you're going to get that. This kills RSV. This kills anthrax, the anthrax that all came out of the Fort Detrick labs. You're getting the Prather private label coffee. This is the best coffee. It's certainly not the Black Rifle sellouts that abandoned Kyle Rittenhouse as well there. And lots of other great stuff in the shop. Somebody ordered a couple of Prather law buoys. We still got some more of those in as well. And so I'm really hoping that you can make the Great American Meetup. The Great American Meetup is designed to counter the Great Reset. June 7th through 9th, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Sign up at jeffreyprather.com/cam. We still have Capella Fund, which is through my christchaplaincy.com 501c3 if you need help getting there. And it's a small group, lots of training going on, real important to do. So we will see about that. But that's what I wanted to cover. And there's the cool mug you're going to get your swag bag if you started early. But what I really want to get into is my special guest. And so a while back, I was honored to be asked to be on the board of Targeted Individuals. And I have joined that board and I'm trying to help out. And I guess I was targeted because I found out afterwards, I was actually made a prime target of the DEA while I was still a DEA special agent, even though I was never charged and never convicted of anything and fired 1 year from retirement without ever even having a bad evaluation. So I guess I clearly am a targeted individual, DEA designated as a prime target. But I never really, I think of myself clearly as a survivor, not a victim. But there's a great group of folks that have a new organization, and I've had some of them on before. Anna Toledo is their attorney, for example, and this is targeted justice and targeted individuals, and I've learned a lot about that. But I've gotten some stuff wrong. I've had some people on, I guess, that weren't targeted individuals or didn't speak correctly. So I ask it pardon for my sins and missing the mark, and we'll try and do better. But I reached out this week to a couple of them. I'm going to have them on here, and that's Dr. Len Ber and Dr. Richard Lighthouse. And I will start, I guess, with Richard. Richard is a writer, scientist. He's got all kinds of, I can't even keep up with all his articles. He worked for NASA, holds his Master's of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from Stanford. I was looking at all this stuff, and he was walking me through the Targeted Justice website the other day. And then Dr. Len Ber is a medical doctor from the former USSR, where he specialized in practice as endocrinologist, came to the US in the early 90s to work in the pharmaceutical industry. We've got a lot in common there. I work biotech, but only for the good guys. In fact, I was just doing competitive intelligence this morning. He's one of the few civilians given the same diagnosis as Dr. Hoffer of the University of Miami as the U.S. Embassy personnel returning from Cuba. He's a strong public advocate for establishing the use of neuroweapons and direct energy weapons as a public issue. Of course, that's something I'm covering. And of course, that fits clearly. Biodigital weaponry fits into 5G warfare. So that's what I really want to get into. And I'm going to start here with Richard. Hey, thanks, Richard, for being patient, and I'm glad you made it. So I will let you have the floor, and if you want me to walk through the Targeted Justice website, let me know, and I'll put it up there.
Okay. Thanks for having us on. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. Targeted Justice, as you mentioned, is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit, and our mission is to support and represent targeted individuals all over the world. We've got a number of important events coming up. We just announced our Colorado Targeted Action 2024. It'll happen in August of this year. That's very important. Our website is actually has a lot of depth to it, and unfortunately, folks get lost in it. But it's very voluminous, and but it's laid out logically. If you have a medical question, you go to the medical tab. If you've got a question about technology, go to the technology tab, etc. Corporations, if you want to know about the lawsuits that are going, tabs that cover each one of those things. So depending on what you're looking for, it's actually fairly well laid out. Dr. Ber has put a lot of time and effort into enhancing our medical tab. There's some really helpful information under his tab and under the medical tab that he has helped to arrange and set up. So we very much appreciate that. Targeted Justice has a mission statement that basically involves three things. First is to educate the public. The second is to educate legislators. Thing is to perform legal actions. And as you'd mentioned earlier, we have one of the best attorneys in the country, Anna Toledo. We're very lucky to have her on our team. She's absolutely first class, amazing mind, amazing memory, First Amendment, a constitutional attorney. And for those attorneys that are wondering, just read some of her work that was put into her recent lawsuits, and you'll get a feeling of the caliber of work that she does. So again, we're very lucky to have her. So on our homepage, Jeff, the questions that we get a lot are the questions about the diagrams. I'm not going to read through the text per se, but I will try to explain. That's our Targeted Action Day coming up in August of this year in Colorado. If you're a targeted individual, take a look at that tab. That will be very helpful. So we've done rallies in the past. This should be a very big rally.
Yeah, I do want to. You were walking
on our homepage.
That diagram was really great. Direct me there, please, and I really like that. Can we look at those?
Yeah, that's on the homepage. Just click on the homepage. There you go. So if you just scooch down a little bit.
Is this it?
We've got a tab that, or a diagram right there. That blue diagram is very important. I encourage TIs and people that are curious about what's going on to study that diagram. It doesn't have a lot of words on it, but we have been very misled by the FBI and how the terrorist screening database is set up. They interchangeably use the word watch list and TSDB. The watch list is actually a very small fraction of the terrorist screening database. And it's really divided into two divisions, the watch list categories and the blacklist categories. Targeted individuals happen to fall under the blacklist categories. In fact, 97% of the names on the TSDB fall in category 3 and 4. They're not on the watch list, but they're in these secret categories that the Office of the Inspector General has said these people have no known ties to terrorism. What are they doing on this list? 97% of the names. So it's representative of the level of corruption at the FBI and the Terrorist Screening Center. We need people to become more informed about this, and their corruption in this case has been fully exposed. So we tried sharing this diagram as much as possible, but I encourage folks to read it. It's very valuable. So on the left there, you can't really see it, but there's a very important video that we recently did. We had 5 medical doctors that participated in a symposium. All of these doctors are targeted individuals. No one's ever done this before. So we're trying to get this information out as quickly as possible. If you've got family and friends that think that this type of information is fantastical, we've got 5 medical doctors here that will tell you it's very real. The targeting program is real. The effects of the directed energy weapons are real. The voice to skull, the gang stalking. Very important. Encourage, if you're a TI, you need to watch this video and share it with your friends and family members. So that's certainly important.
Oh yeah, I do a lot with.
If we scooch down a little bit.
Some of those. Not that one though. Sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, it's the diagrams itself. I'm not going to try to read through the text, but if we scooch down a little bit, we'll see some of the other diagrams, and the diagrams are helpful because they compress what would be paragraphs and paragraphs of information that you had to explain. And so we've got a flyer that we use to announce our lawsuit. This is some of our messages here. I'm not going to read through that, but I encourage TIs to read through that. It basically explains some of the most important aspects of the targeting program and how it works. And so rather than reading through that, I encourage you to get on the website and read through those. There's some very important points on there. The diagrams are the things that people tend to need a little bit of help with, and that's what I'm hoping to talk about today. So if we scoot down just a little bit further, we'll see.
There we go.
There we go. Oh, there we go. So
I think it's important, something that I brought out, not revealing classified information from my clearances with DOJ and DOD, which were both top secret simultaneously, but came out in revolver articles, is that the DEA has a group called the Special Operations Group that sits in Fairfax, Virginia, where they have intelligence professionals who gather SIGINT OCONUS outside continental United States, gather it in, then pass it to all the federal law enforcement counterparts that are sitting there and say, develop your own parallel PC, which is fruit of the poisonous tree, which I guess is up your alley as well. And that's how a lot of this stuff happens. And we see this with Trump, where they're trying to manipulate intelligence. And we see this all of the time. And I think that's where you see these non-investigative subjects. So to open a case file, if you don't know, because I was a federal law enforcement, but I was also intelligence, is you've got to have an investigation, you got to open a case file. And so when you open it, you eventually got to close it. But they've got this other category now where it's just intelligence and it just goes on. And what's the intelligence? It's whatever you want it to be. There's a subcategory. 3 intelligence classifications are confidential, secret, and top secret. And then there are caveats. And the CIA's favorite is ORCON, originator control. What that basically means is the intelligence is whatever we say it is. It doesn't have to be verified or anything. It's just we're originated, so it is what we say it is. So, but I'll shut up now. Please go ahead.
No, that's very helpful, Jeff. Thank you. This first diagram is one of our most popular diagrams, and it basically explains how everyone in the United States and Europe and in 60 countries, at least 60 countries in the world, are being tracked by satellites. They're not tracking your cell phone. They're not tracking, they frequently track cars and vehicles and boats. But in this case, this system was set up to track people, and it bounces a signal off the top back part of your head right there. And every person that we've measured, whether you're a targeted individual or just a regular civilian, every person we've measured has that signal on top of their head. And it's between a frequency of about 3,200 and 3,750 megahertz. And absolutely everyone has that signal.
Let me stop you there and let me bring in Dr. Len Ber to comment on this. Dr. Ber, so this kind of goes into the medical, I think. So explain to me how, because I've seen this before, but I don't really understand it, how this differentiates from the electromagnetic bioluminescence that we emit anyway as electric beings. How is this differentiated that this is a separate bouncing signal?
Well, I think that there's several successful ways to track people, different kind of biometrics, different systems, different sensors. This is just one of them. And the way it works, my understanding of how it works, that every brain has its own brain signature. This signature, this electromagnetic signal, it's unique to every person, and it disrupts or distorts the Earth electromagnetic field in a specific way. And that distortion is what can be picked up by a satellite anywhere in the world. You really can't hide anywhere from it. And what is interesting is, since we know this information, why are we still having missing people? That's my comment. And missing children. Yeah. Are you free? I think you froze.
Yeah, that's possible. I'll just add to that, Len, and say that, yeah, it's absolutely everybody's being tracked. That signal goes up to a Lockheed GPS-3 satellite. There's also some Boeing satellites still in operation that are in orbit. It goes to
wow, there you are.
base.
So we lost it. We lost everybody there for a second. Are you there?
Here.
Yes, we're okay.
This is terrible. The electronic interference is working. Congratulations.
Yes.
Lost Jeffrey.
Yeah, I think they consider this to be fairly sensitive information, and they'd rather it not get broadcast. Okay. It's going to get broadcast.
The way I described the brain signature, do you have anything to add to that? Are there any specific technological? Because I'm not a physicist. This is obviously a biophysical process, but the physics part, I think you have a better understanding. So I would like to hear your explanation, because we all froze at some point.
Yeah, I think you covered it, Len. It's one of the ways that they're tracking us. They're also tracking us from cell towers in every direction. And the proof of that is that you can cover your ears in a quiet room and listen to what we call the microwave. It'll be a pop, 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 pop. And if you need something more sensitive, you can get stethoscope and put it right above your ear, right behind your ear, and it will definitely pick it up. Yeah. Somebody else can listen to it as well. So you're correct. The satellites is one way that they are tracking us, and the cell towers is another.
Do you guys know we both just went out?
Of course.
I can't tell you the last time that's happened, but clearly they wanted to disrupt that. I mean, they've done it before, but it's been quite a while. But that was, and I had to close some windows to give. But I have a tower for delivering my casts. But I just want to see if you guys knew that. So let's go back and please repeat that, because you were out for like 2 minutes there. So go ahead, whoever was talking.
Did you get my message?
Okay, I'll start. I'll back up and say I was starting to explain this one diagram. We call it the satellite diagram, and it shows how everybody is being tracked with a pulse signal about once a second off the top back part of your head. That's people in more than 60 countries all over the world are being tracked. They're not. They can track your cell phone, but that's not what they're doing here. They're tracking the location of your head, and the satellites, Lockheed GPS 3 satellites and Boeing GPS version 2 satellites are still in orbit and participating in this. And the frequency that they use is between about 3,200 megahertz and 3,750 megahertz. And that signal then is routed at the speed of light to Schriever Base in Colorado. They can then, at the speed of light, send it back to a cell tower that's close to you and deliver a subliminal message or voice to skull or any number of things, or continue to track your location using cell towers. And the proof in the pudding of that is you can stand in if you're a targeted individual, you can go into a quiet room and cup your ears and listen very quietly for about 30 seconds, and you'll start to hear pop, 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 pop. Some people describe it as more of a machine gun sound. Most people seem to hear it as microwave popcorn in a distant room. But those little pops are coming from cell towers, and they're directing at your head. It's their backup tracking method. So the satellites provide the primary method, and the cell towers provide a secondary tracking method in case the satellites go out for whatever reason. They intend to keep tracking us. So Dr. Ber mentioned that the satellites are one method of tracking us, and he's correct. It is one of several methods that they can use to track people.
I have long surmised that the mass killers, particularly the tyranny terrorists like Ramos at Uvalde, are activated by a series of SSRIs, which do nothing except make people more violent. They don't work at all. That's been proven. And AI, artificial intelligence, targeting them. I showed the video where there was an army plane that came in to Uvalde before the shooting, left just after the shooting. There were two guys. That clip that everybody showed, I showed it a little bit before, where there were two guys standing there watching him go in. So I surmise that via all of particularly violent video games, where for a long time intelligence personnel have transmitted messages by video games. That's a standard practice these days. But is this also a methodology for activating mass killers?
According to, and I'll refer to the CIA reports that we've read, there was a CIA doctor named Dr. Ewan Cameron, who was actually based in Canada, who participated in the CIA's early MK Ultra project. And he would frequently test people or experiment on them by putting them into a coma for days or weeks at a time, and then wipe their brain using electroshock treatments on their brain, and then try to create a new personality in them. And this was, we believe, one of the ways they created serial killers and assassins in the past. But now they have the capability to do this remotely. So repetitive, extreme attacks with these microwaves. I'll refer to Dr. Ber to maybe give us a little bit of information on Havana syndrome and these very intense microwave attacks that can be very devastating from a medical standpoint.
Thank you, Richard. I would like to talk about that case in Maine that was maybe 6 months ago. He was a mass shooter who was tortured by V2K, voice to skull. When you hear voices and you can't get rid of it. And directed energy weapons that produces so-called Havana syndrome, or the current nomenclature's non-kinetic brain injury. And if you, on autopsy, which he had an autopsy, they said that his brain had signs of multiple concussions. Well, I wrote to the doctor who did the autopsy, and I asked, well, your explanation for concussions is that he was a trainer at a shooting range or something like that. So he had multiple micro concussions and traumas. But have you excluded the non-kinetic brain injury? Because this is exactly how a brain of a person tortured with directed energy would look like. Never received an answer. Nevertheless, the 10 months that he was tortured ended up in him shooting, I think, 18 people. And it was not a long time ago. So yes, your theories are correct. I'm also of the same opinion. And what was the second question?
Well, let me comment on that. Is since GWAT has been going on, and there are so many room clearings, a lot of explosive dynamic entry, and I used to do that, but we in my day we used blast shields. They don't use blast shields anymore. So I have a lot of friends who have had a lot of TBIs, and they can see on autopsies where there's a granularity in the brain that indicates, I guess, TBIs. I don't think shooting ranges. I'm a longtime firearms instructor, federal firearms instructor since '93. I don't think that really necessarily does that, but entry explosions certainly do that. But I'm not sure whether you're asking me a question or if Richard.
No, we're just going back and forth. Okay. I also think that the majority of mass shooters have served in the army. They're veterans or have been have gone to serve somewhere, because that creates an excuse for these multiple concussion syndrome on autopsy. You can say, oh, well, this is probably from the time this gentleman served. So that is potentially a cover-up for the Havana syndrome and KBI.
I don't know if I agree with that, but certainly there's a lot of transgender shooters. But I would imagine that with the chemical, they got to have lots of injections, even if they haven't had castration, surgery, and everything else. That's an opportunity. Is that so? I've heard from others that a lot of times even dental stuff can have implants that that can then influence people. Is that correct, or do I have that wrong?
Well, you're correct about dental implants containing nanotechnology. I actually have a beautiful Olympus microscope. I joined the sort of international microscopist group that I don't remember if you I don't know if you remember, in 2022 in September, David Hughes from Lincoln University in UK published a study, 130 pages of proof that the vaccines contain nanotechnology from 16 groups in around the world. Do you recall that publication? It was
I've shown a lot of dark field microscopy, if I'm saying that right, and showing the synthetic life forms and all of that. And had Dr. Malassi on, had Sasha Latipova on, Dr. Tenpenny, Dr. Vliet, lots of other medical doctors confirming that's very clear. Right. What's less clear is what they're trying to do with it, and I think that's where you guys come in.
Well, we think that remember the beginning of the COVID so-called pandemic, which was not a pandemic at all. Now right. that we're looking at the numbers, Yuval Harari said before even the vaccines launched that this is the time when we start surveillance under the skin. How is it connected to COVID-19? Vaccines deliver nanotechnology, and it self-assembles under the skin, but it's only half of the story. It's under the skin. It's actually a third of the story. Under the skin, under the skull, and it's not only biosurveillance. It's a bidirectional connection. A lot of people.
Or is it possible continuation of the blast shields? Oh, we're back. Okay, you guys faded out there.
What was the last thing that you heard?
Oh, they're gone again.
Every time I say something important, like last time, the recording stopped when I said why are we still having missing children if this technology is applicable to everybody, and the connection disappeared. And this time, I said that Yuval Harari gave us only 1/3 of the story, that it's not just biosurveillance under the skin, it's also biosurveillance under the skull, and it's bidirectional. What can be detected can be also influenced.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Len. Targeted justice has tried. We've laid out on our website, especially under your tab, some of these details. So folks that want to learn a little bit more about some of these medical details, we encourage you to go to targetedjustice.com and look for the tab Dr. Len Ber, and he's got some very important and helpful information under that tab. We also have a separate medical tab where we cover things like implants, Morgellons, and a number of other medical issues.
Welcome back, Jeffrey.
He's trying to come back.
Go back. Yeah. So we lost you guys again, and there were looking at the Rumble chat, and they're saying about how about a beanie made from Faraday cloth. Yeah, I got one made for my birthday, and there's also
This is incredible.
Wow.
That's about what I expected, that there would be some interference, but not this much.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he can. If he's,
yeah, I wonder if this part is being recorded when he is not on. Probably not.
No, I'm back now.
Yeah. Okay. What was the last thing? You started showing something. You said.
Well, because I lost you guys, I was answering some questions on the Rumble chat about beanies and protection, and so I was just showing one of the things I got for my birthday was this Faraday, and I sell a lot of Faraday bags, and somebody even gave me a Faraday ball cap as well. So eliminating that. So the question was, if you bag everything up, then it's just them. You were talking about multiple ways to track you, but if you bag up your stuff, then let's reiterate those multiple ways. We've just talked about the top of the head. What else? If you're bagged up, how can they track you?
So that's a good point, Jeff. So cell towers have a backup tracking system, and I briefly mentioned that TIs can cup your ears in a quiet room, and if you sit for about 30 seconds, you'll hear pop, 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 pop. And if you're not able to hear it, you can get a just inexpensive stethoscope and put the sensor right above your ear or right behind your ear, and almost everybody is able to hear that. In fact, you can let somebody else that's not a targeted individual listen to your tracking pops on your head, and that's all coming from a cell tower. So we want people to be aware of that there's a massive tracking system being used on everyone, not just targeted individuals. The cell towers are used as a backup tracking on at least targeted individuals, possibly more. But we are aware of those frequencies. We provided a list on our website of those frequencies if somebody wants to double check them.
I would like to add that Faraday cages and water bags, they're useful to some extent, but we also need to realize that part of targeting or part of directed energy weapon systems or other microwave attacks, there's a what they call the new physics is a part of it. So some call it longitudinal waves, some call it Tesla waves, some call it scalar waves, and from what you told me, Richard, there's really no protection. Could you explain that so-called new physics, which is not new, it's been around, it's just not being taught.
Yeah, that's correct. The scalar waves can be used as a guide signal. Scalar waves vibrate back and forth. They're not like the typical EMF wave that vibrates like a sine wave. Scalar waves vibrate in the direction of motion. If you can imagine like a very fine silk thread that travels at least the speed of light and possibly faster. And these scalar waves can then be used to precisely point a weapon in any direction. So that is clearly being used. It can go right through water. Scalar waves will go through water, doesn't slow them down. Tesla once claimed that a scalar wave could travel all the way through the planet and not hit anything. It can go right through the middle of an atom and never touch anything in the atom. So just think of it as a fine silk thread that travels at the speed of light or faster. And that's what they're using in, for example, the Vercator technology and in this tracking technology that's based in satellites.
So this is something I think you sent me and I've published on my Patreon. Are you saying, so faster than the speed of light, are you talking about quantum entanglement then?
Well, unfortunately, it's not a well understood technology, Jeff. Scalar waves, there are a number of people coming out of DoD that are saying that scalar waves are instantaneous. So, and that we have planetary defense type systems that use these scalar waves that can instantly knock down a vehicle that's in orbit, that there is no time lag, that they point the weapon and discharge it, and the weapon is instantaneous. So I've heard that from two different sources, so I can't verify it, obviously, but it would seem to violate Einstein's speed limit with the speed of light. But anyway, these two credible sources claim that it travels at faster than the speed of light. But at any rate, for a targeted individual, what we should be concerned about is that it's a straight line. It'll go right through your house. It'll go through solid rock. It'll go through water in a swimming pool. And that's what makes it so TIs can't hide. And that trying to understand the technology that we're dealing with is what gears you to decide, what defensive mechanisms you can take, such as targeted justice. We recommend a water shielding. We found that to be the most effective shielding. We're not saying don't use metal shielding or fabric shielding, but just that we have found water shielding to be the most effective. So it can be fairly expensive. We provided some example diagrams on our website under the tab called water shielding. So I recommend that TIs take a look at that.
Yeah, science fiction has long talked about spaceships having their water carrying out front to take care of the radiation. So that makes total sense. I'll have to look at that as well. And I apologize, but I shut some of my windows down because we were having such trouble keeping everything open. And I haven't had problems like that in such a long time. But this is just going through the scalar waves. So you're from NASA, and to me, the whole but I'm from the intelligence community. So intelligence is supposed to be eyes out, and I'm saying there are eyes in. NASA is supposed to be eyes up, but I'm saying, from my understanding of NASA now, it's all eyes down. Everything, the whole program is covert warfare, which fits in with 5G warfare. Does that jive with your experience?
Well, I worked at NASA many years ago, decades ago. So I'm not really up to speed on the current type of wing. I worked in the space shuttle program out of Johnson Space Center. So we didn't really have access to any type of heavily classified information. I was in the flight operations division. And so basically just getting the crew up and back home safely was our 100% of the team's focus. So dealing with classified information wasn't something that came up on a regular basis.
Oh, okay, fair enough. But just to stay on that subject for a second, it doesn't seem like the space program has gone very far. I turned on the old 2001 movie the other day because I'm an old science fiction guy, and we're not even close to any of that. And my understanding, my assessment is because everything is focused on watching us as opposed to exploring space. Gene Roddenberry would be very disappointed. But what say you about that, Dr. Bear? Any comments?
Yes, I actually had a very interesting conversation recently on our podcast, Targeted Justice v. Garland. That is, we discuss topics around our main legal action, but also adjacent topics. And an author of this brand new book, 5G Warfare, Armin Krishnan, professor from South Carolina University, he was talking about, he was explaining how 5G warfare, the war that we are in, as you said before, we don't know who is attacking us. We don't know how they're attacking us. We don't even know if we're being attacked. But the domain of this warfare is human cognitive function. So cognition. They attack our cognition. This is the first time in history. We need to realize the significance of this moment. This is the first time in history when propaganda, we've been exposed to propaganda for a long time, but this is the first time in history when it can be delivered directly, or your brain can be influenced directly by these new technological means. That's what's new about 5G warfare. And target individuals have served as lab rats for decades now. And now we are exposing the mechanism how we've been enrolled into this experiment. It's a torture-based program. It's a direct interaction with the brain. I mean, this nanotechnology that we know the COVID vaccines delivered to over 5 billion people on the planet. It creates, for example, MAC addresses. MAC addresses. Media access control. It's a digital radio signal in a certain Bluetooth low energy band, and so we are not supposed to emit these digital radio signals. Our biology is what's the word, analog. We're not supposed to send out digital signals. Only if we have this technology inside us. And I think I'm still the only person that I heard of who admitted openly that I emit a MAC address. We did a study, we followed the protocol, it's published on academia.edu. I emit a MAC address. It's been verified. So I do have this technology. I'm a targeted individual. So this technology has been tested. You can't just launch it. And cognitive weapons, you can't test them on animals because cognition is different. So mind control, cognition control, influencing your decisions, that's what 5G warfare is. And targeted individuals are lab rats, have been lab rats for this kind of warfare. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's a very profound answer. So it really gets to sentience and the level of sentience. And that seems to be lessening. I've been teaching a lot of stuff for a long time. And what I notice with my students of all ages is it's harder now for them to focus or understand more profound concepts. For me as a Christian, it goes back to destroying the DNA as a weapon for the adversary against God. And I just think that fits perfectly into all of this as well. But would you agree that it all? So that perspective is very different from my 5G war. You said something before, we were talking before the show. You said in the skin and under the skin or something. What was that again?
That was a famous quote of Yuval Harari. When the so-called COVID pandemic started, even before the vaccines were available, he prophesied that this time will be known in history as the beginning of bio surveillance under the skin. And what I said is that he only said 1/3 of the truth, because it's biosurveillance under the skin, biosurveillance under the skull, and it's bi-directional. What can be monitored can be influenced. So that was my notion.
So I want to ask you, because I've called Putin and Russia an ally of the American people. Not that Putin is a good guy. Putin has said there's no ex-KGB guys, and he's an ex-KGB guy. But because he's against the child trafficking and the trannyism, I think he's an ally of the American people. I don't think he's an ally of the corrupt government we have. But when I've had Sasha Atapova, former Ukrainian, now American pharma executive, super sharp lady, great artist, she says Putin is all in on this stuff too. What's your take? What's your analysis of Putin? I say Putin is the enemy of my enemy is my ally. He's not my friend, but he's my ally. What's your take on Putin and Russia?
Well, I think when we allied on certain stances, on certain positions, we are that's alignment. I wouldn't go as far as saying that Putin is not a dictator, because I lived in a dictatorship and I know what it tastes like, and he's definitely a dictator. But we could be aligned on certain international items.
Well, it's like France. We Americans go over to France during the revolution to get support against the British. But if you look at the French, corrupt, and then they throw out Christianity as well, just like the Mexican Revolution does as well. We certainly didn't want to be like France, just like we don't want to be like that. But that's my point there. Richard, you got any comments on that?
Well, it's very, very easy to put labels, I think, on politics, and political pundits love to do that and refer as something is specifically left or right or center, and we're supposed to know exactly what that means. But frequently we find odd bedfellows of sides that get together on an issue, and so I think it's very difficult, even in American politics, to place labels on individuals and peoples. That's not to say that some of those labels might be deserved, but I think it's important to look at a specific issue and see where somebody stands on it.
Okay, well, I'm saying it's not us against us; it's us against them, and it's democide, and it's the global cabal, and that's why I think that's important to focus on that. But I want to thank you both for coming on. I've learned a lot, and again, it's an honor to be working with you, and I've got a much better perspective of the war and what a targeted individual is. Before we close, you got any tips because I never want to be a victim, I want to be a survivor, and I always try and close with options, answers, and solutions to this. So, Dr. Ber, you want to go first?
Sure. I think it's important to reach out. The targeted community is somewhat close to the world around them, because basically our claims are considered to be fantastical, So they either just deny it from the get-go, or sometimes they say, okay, let me look into the claims, and then they pull something like Occam's razor. It's like if you're hearing voices, most likely it is a psychiatric disorder. Well, this has been proven to be a wrong a principle to apply to the targeting program, because you never apply Occam's razor to something that has an intelligent agent behind it. And we know that there are people and intelligent agents and AI behind it. So you can't just say, oh, it just, it's in your head. So reaching out to people outside of the targeting community is our number one priority. Just like Richard said, education. The number one mission of targeted justice is education. And I want to tell people who don't think they're targeted, who don't think that it concerns them, I think that the goal of this 5G domicidal, menticidal warfare is for everybody on the planet to be mind controlled and to be a targeted individual. So if you stay on the sidelines, you will be next. That's my message.
Well said. Well said. Richard?
I could definitely echo some of that. I do want to emphasize for folks that want a little bit more information, targetedjustice.com, our website is a treasure trove of free information. Our newsletter that comes out at least twice a week, targetedjustice.substack.com. Please check that out. That is also free. If you care to donate, you can pay $8 a month for a subscription. We certainly encourage that. And again, we have our big Colorado Targeted Action 2024 coming up in August. We'd like to see all of you folks out there join us. It's probably going to be the biggest gathering of targeted individuals to date. So it'll be a very special event. We're going to have everything planned out. You're going to meet a lot of good folks and make some lifetime connections. So please plan on being there.
And I did have Dr. Ber's show up, which is Targeted Justice versus Garland, but I took it down when I was trying to get connection back. But I'll put that up as well. Well, thank you both for coming on, and glad to be working with you. And I'm always hope-filled and faith-filled that we can win this, because we're starting to figure out what they're doing. So that's really important. So thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, so sorry that was rough, but I'm sure that's purposeful interference. I highly encourage you to take a look at Targeted Justice, Dr. Ber and Richard Lighthouse's stuff, and we'll continue to work with them. And the fact that the show broke so many times is evidence that they are trying to shut it down. And I'm taking a quick look here before I close up if I have particular questions. All of a sudden, all the tinnitus clinics are popping up all over the place. Yeah, well, I've got lots of tinnitus. Is there any connection to tinnitus and cell tower ping as well as symptoms like earache? Oh, I didn't see that there. Jeff is well loved. Wow, that's nice. Okay, well, sorry that was so difficult. I'll be back tomorrow on my PratherPoint on Friday at the Bright Giant TV. It's 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern. So remember, we don't always win, but we always learn more in defeat. And winning is difficult, demanding, and always expensive. We can and will win if we commit, because the most committed wins. So define what you're willing to fight, kill, and die for. We are behind enemy lines in our own country against our own government. The faithful versus the fakes. Reset versus resistance. Parents versus pedos. God is not with us. but we are with God. Tyrants always fall. Tyranny always fails. Graphene is not in our DNA, but freedom is. But freedom is never given. It is earned, won, fought for, and taken. So take it.